Good morning, YouTube. My name is Will. This is my Evo 8 RS, and today we are going to be talking about some things that you should look out for when buying an Evo. Specifically more geared towards the Evo 8s and 9s, but some of this does apply to the 10s as well. As always, you know Lotus. And Enzo. Gosh, it doesn't matter what day of the week, what time of day, somebody's always got to be cutting the grass. Alright, so I'm going to break this into 3 parts. Things that are commonly broken, things that are commonly missing, and things that are commonly changed. So this isn't exactly an extensive list. This is just some of the more common things that you can knock off right off the bat, typically by looking at photos or by maybe asking a quick question or two. So let's talk about broken things. The one I want to talk about first has to do with the transmission, and that is what's commonly referred to as the 5th gear grind. GSR Evos, so the 5-speed 8s and 9s, the synchros will grind when going into 5th, typically under hard driving, not necessarily like racing driving, just quick driving. My car has this, my Evo 9 that I bought brand new had it. It's just something that happens. It's annoying, but in my experience, it doesn't get any worse. Are you okay? What happened? Are you limp? You're not limping, are you? As I was saying, it doesn't typically get any worse once it comes to B. It can be fixed with a transmission rebuild. Typically run you probably with labor anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. I wasn't concerned, but I knew it probably had it. I asked the seller, it did. I used it to help negotiate the price lower. I suggest you do the same. The brake fade, not in the sense that the brakes themselves fade while braking, but the paint fades. So I did a video on this a couple weeks ago. You can see mine. Again, it's an annoyance. They fade differently based on different conditions, but they almost always all fade to some degree. You can watch that video if you want to know more about the reasons why. Just know that it is common, and really the only way to properly fix it is to have them repainted or repowder coated. So you have to take them off, obviously, and have a shop do that. And speaking of faded items, specifically with the Evo 8s, you will see clear coat fade primarily on the wing. The wing is almost guaranteed to fade and to peel. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. I'm sure I can, but know that'll happen. Now, 2 broken things that are more serious. That is if you are looking at an MR, so an Evo 8 or 9 6-speed transmission, and it has any synchro issues at all in any gear, that is a big red flag that transmission is probably short on lifespan, and you need to factor in a transmission rebuild 100%. It doesn't necessarily mean the person was overly rough on the car or anything. It just means that it's at the end of its lifespan. You can watch my video more about that if you want. Again, I've done videos on almost all these topics in depth. This is just meant to be a shorter, quick list. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up, as I was making this video, I had somebody message me on this, so I thought it was a good one to add, and that is the ACD triple light. This is an issue on the Evo, could be an issue on the 8s, 9s, or 10s, but you will notice that the ACD in there, hopefully you can see that. So you will see the ACD, tarmac, gravel, and snow. It lights up based on what setting you have it in, and once again, I have a video explaining the whole ACD if you want to watch that. But it should not light up more than one. If more than one is lighting up, now I will say, if you turn an Evo on and all 3 lights light up, like say you go for a test drive, you stop, pull the car over, shut it off, disconnect the battery, reconnect the battery, and drive it again. And if you do this, and if you're looking to buy in this car, when I say drive it again, I mean take it for a good long drive. You don't have to beat on it, you don't have to race it, but take it for a good long drive. Get on the highway. I would say drive. At this point, if I'm considering this car and I got a triple light, I'm going to drive this thing for like 20, 30 plus minutes straight. Highway speeds especially, and then maybe some stop and go traffic. Get a good long test drive. If it doesn't come back, then it's probably nothing. My Evo 9 used to do that, and that's why I say this. I bought my Evo 9 new. I knew its entire history. There was never anything wrong with my ACD, but I would occasionally, just for whatever reason, leave my house, leave work, leave wherever, and I would get an ACD triple light. And it would stay on. It would usually go off once it happened a handful of times, so I stopped worrying about it. Usually it would just go away once I turned off the car. A couple times I disconnected the battery. I mean, we're talking over the course of a few years, it maybe happened 3 or 4 times. So, I mean, it's not crazy, but on the off chance that it just fluke happens when you go for a test drive, be cautious, be mindful of it, but don't necessarily freak out just yet. If the ACD light comes back on immediately, that is a huge problem. That probably means the ACD pump is failing or failed, at which point that is not cheap. I don't know what that costs, but I would assume it's at least what the transmission, so yeah, I would definitely want that fixed. And I would not want to drive around. I mean, you can drive around without it working, I suppose. It just means you don't have the center differential, but I don't know if that has any ill effects on anything else. I personally wouldn't want to do it. I just wouldn't want that, period. So just be mindful of that. As a side note, be mindful of any Evos where they've removed the ACD, because most likely they ran into this issue and just decided to scrap it. I don't like that solution either. The car's supposed to have it, it should have it, and stop taking the cheap way out by just removing it, people. We talked about broken things. Let's talk about missing things. One of the things you will see that is common with cars like this is they like to swap the wheels. You'll notice that I don't have my factory wheels, although I do have Evo wheels. These are the Evo 10 MR BBS wheels. Specifically the MR wheels of the 8s, 9s, and 10s. You will find that owners will swap them out maybe because they want to run a different wheel or something, whatever. But if they're missing, they're actually kind of valuable. I mean, they're not like crazy valuable, but the 10s especially, they're not cheap. So while a stock set of inky 8s or 9s may be worth, I don't even know what they're worth, maybe $400 or $500, BBS wheels, I mean, could be double that or more, and that's not nothing. If they're not gonna have them, they better have something that's worth at least as much, if not more. So just keep that in mind. It is a big deal. You know, if they've just thrown something cheap on there, you could be losing, because you know, these cars are older, but what used to be more common is people would go to trade them in or sell them, and they would sell those off separately, you know, or swap them. You'll commonly see them with like the Evo inky wheels on there, so you'll see an MR with GSR wheels. That's a huge red flag. That straight up means somebody along the way has sold those wheels and cheaped out to get themselves some money. So just make sure you're aware of that and factor that into your price that you pay for the car. Other things that are commonly missing, one is the hood vent. So you'll see it's these black fins in here. Now you notice mine has a little chip. That is common, they get chipped. I want to get this professionally done. I'll probably have it done when I do my brakes. I spray painted it. It looks better up until the chips came back, obviously. And then the other thing, which I'm not really going to be able to show, well, maybe a little bit here. You can see how there's kind of like this gap here where it looks like something should be. That is because my under tray is missing. Now, if you've been following along for a long time, you know that just broke. I didn't just take it off. But what's common is people who are working on their cars, or especially if they're modifying the cars or anything, they take them off and then they either don't put them back on, or they break the pins and don't want to put them back on or spend the money. It does make the engine bay dirtier, which is why I would like to get mine back. However, mine, like I said, broke while I was driving it. So it is, and it's not super cheap. You know, I mean, there's a reason I haven't put a new one on there, because an OEM one is like $500-$600. I'm not going to pay for that because that's just silly. So I'd probably do like an aftermarket one to make it a little nicer, a little easier to get on and off. But I just haven't done anything with it yet. It's not a huge deal as far as drivability. I think it does affect the aerodynamics a little. But just know that it's not cheap, so you're missing out on some parts that aren't cheap. Now the hood vent thing, that's just something that people remove. You know, I've thought about just taking it off on this one. I took it off on my 9. Again, it just makes the engine much dirtier, and the fact that I don't like the way my valve cover looks, it kind of exposes that. So anyways, I just haven't. So it's not a big deal so much if that's missing. That part's not as expensive to replace, but it probably means the engine bay and stuff is going to be dirtier, so just keep that in mind. Okay, lastly, let's talk about things that get changed frequently. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing in all scenarios, but just be mindful of it, especially if you're new to Evos. So, watch out, Lotus. Lotus, watch out. So, I have an Evo 8, and you may not know this if you're not familiar, but these are actually Evo 9 seats. I have the full Evo 9 interior, well, seats anyways, not all of it, but front and rear. That's right, I don't have power lock, so let me just reach back here. There we go. Try Lotus again. So yeah, I have the full Evo 9 front and rear seats. Now they are the exact same seats as the Evo 8, and I still have my Evo 8 seats. They're inside. But watch out, Lotus. But most people, myself included, feel that the Evo 9 seats just look better. So if you can get a set for a good price on your Evo 8, great. So if you're looking at an Evo 8 and has Evo 9 seats, yeah, you're doing well, and that's common. But be mindful, if you're looking at an Evo 9 that has Evo 8 seats, that means you're on the crappy end of that deal, and definitely factor that in, because again, you would think that they're the exact same, that they would, even though the ones look better. Well, this is America, you should know better. Things that look better cost more. Evo 9 interior is worth several $100s more than an 8 interior, so if you're buying a 9 with an 8 interior, just know that you're missing out on some funds there. And if you're already missing the BBS wheels as well, you're getting hammered a few times, so keep that in mind. This stuff adds up very quickly. Okay, another common thing you will see swapped, and it's something again that I've done, is the JDM rear. So this is the same rear bumper that they have in Japan on the Evos. And when I say the same, I do truly mean the same. This is an OEM Mitsubishi bumper. It's not crazy expensive. I don't know, I think it was like $800-900, but it's not cheap either. And then when you factor in that you got to get it installed, painted, all this stuff to make it look right, and trust me when I say mine does look right, even the license plate came out pretty well, I think. Not only that, but I also have a crash beam. We'll talk about that in a second. The first thing you want to pay attention to is that they don't have some cheap like fiberglass version. You want to make sure it's an actual OEM Mitsubishi part. Now, as common with a lot of things, people may do something like this when they get rear-ended, which is what I did. Now, I got rear-ended extremely lightly. I mean, it literally put a scratch. In fact, I still have my JDM bumper in case I ever go to, I still have my OEM first bumper, my US bumper, just in case I ever do go to sell the car, I can actually show them the damage because it is literally a scratch. But anyways, it's a long story of how I got such a good insurance agent adjuster that gave me a lot of money for that scratch. Anyways, so I got a JDM bumper, which I was going to do anyways, so it just kind of worked out. The other thing you will, and this is, I don't even know how you would check this, to be honest. Maybe if you crawl underneath it. I mean, obviously you could ask them, and hopefully they're honest and everything if you're buying from like a private party. But one of the reasons we don't have this bumper in the US is the crash beam that is actually going across, and it connects the, well, not the frame, but like the unibody on each side. I still have mine. Now they make aftermarket ones that you can buy and put in there. They're a couple $100, but what I had the body shop do was actually just shorten mine because it fits, it's just too long. And there's like an Evo M tutorial on this where literally they just shorten it and that's it. And then it welds, and then they re-weld it right back on. So that's what I wanted to have done. So I still have my rear crash beam, which I think is insane when you people take those off. Because if you get rear-ended without that, I mean, it goes from a modern car with their crumple zones and all that stuff to a freaking death trap. So don't do that. Make sure the person who did it didn't do that either, because again, that's, you know, not only in that case are you losing out on some money because you should go fix that, but I mean, you're quite literally putting your life in danger to an even more degree by not having that. While we're back here, this isn't a main thing, but I do want to say, like, I have the UK badging. The typical badging would just say like Evolution. Not a big deal because the Evos don't have them drilled in, they're just all glued on, so you can change those. But the other thing I wanted to mention back here is the taillights. Now this is OEM Evo 8 taillights. The 9s look a little different. What is common is people will swap them out. One of the things you will see is the Evo 7 taillights put in there. I don't particularly like those. They're like all red. I know some people do. That's a matter of personal taste. I don't know what those go for. Honestly, I don't know what the OEMs are worth. To a lesser extent, people will swap headlights. That's not as common, but it does still happen, so keep that in mind as well. All right, so that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and got some usefulness out of it. Like if you did. Just a reminder, I will be at the shootout next weekend. As I've mentioned in a few other videos, if you've got an Evo up there, or really just in the Cincinnati general area, or basically somewhere where you'd be willing to maybe have an Evo in a video at some point, definitely DM me on Instagram about that. We can talk more about that. Or like I said, if you're going to be up at the shootout with it, that would be even more convenient. Other than that, appreciate you guys as always, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Lotus, oh, say bye. Say bye. Say bye.
You're one and only.